Well, hello and welcome all you wonderful people out there in YouTube land with the Texas Special YouTube channel. And in this month's how-to video, we're going to do a little basic electrical work. Now, I have been having some issues with dead spots on the back side of the railroad on main track number 1 and also on the trolley line. So, we are going to rectify that today. Laid out before you is excuse me, everything that I am going to use for today's project. So we have 6 Lionel number 6-12053 accessory power wires, which will be used for the actual feeder wires themselves. We have wire. We have these EverStart quick wire connects, suitcase connector type. We have my cordless screwdriver, drill bits, pliers, obviously to crimp these shut, and the drill. Obviously I'm going to need the drill to drill through the foam and the plywood to install the wires. A fair portion of this video, well, maybe not a fair portion, but I will be doing some filming underneath the railroad, so that may or may not come out all that well given the lighting conditions. I'm going to do what I can, but we will adapt and overcome. And also I have these zip ties, which I didn't really need 14 inches, but do what you can with what you got, I guess. Okay, so I have everything laid out roughly the way I need it. All the wire and the quick connects are all underneath the railroad, which is where I'll need them. I have my drill and my cordless driver here, because I'll obviously need them up here. The first step is going to be to unscrew the track where I'm going to be working. I'm going to be working one track at a time, that way I don't get stuff confused. And I'm going to work my way down until I have everything unscrewed on this track. So given that I actually have scenery in place right here in this corner, I'm going to screw this down real quick. That way this doesn't move around too much and it doesn't affect my scenery. I'm also going to do the same thing on main number 2. Just shoot a quick screw in there. And now when I pop off the straight track from this curve, I'm going to get very minimal scenery damage. So with this corner secure, I'm going to very gently, very gently as I possibly can, just kind of wedge this blade in here to help pry the track apart. And there we go. And now the track is apart and I can begin the work. So as you can see here, I've got the entire track section all the way down. This entire run of straight track has been flipped over. It's been disconnected on both ends from the curves. So now I am going to drill my holes. I'm going to do a feeder here on this end and a feeder in the exact same spot down at the other end, just short of the curve. To drill my feeder holes, I am using a 3/8 inch bit. Now I don't really need to use a bit that big. I'm purely doing it because if for whatever reason I need to remove the feeder wires, I can fairly easily do so, because the last time I installed feeders on here and ended up changing up the main line, I was unable to retrieve any of the fast track accessory wires. So I don't want to make that mistake again, so we're going big. I'm going to line up the track and start my drilling. Which that actually lined up with a natural seam in the table, so that's a happy coincidence. We'll take the first of the 6 accessory power wires out of the package, and something critical that you need to be aware of with these is, obviously you're working with electricity once you're done with this whole process. So with that in mind, you need to be aware of which is the hot and which is the ground. So basic electrical 101, red is positive, red is hot, black is negative or ground. Lionel went a step further and they put a white stripe on the positive and a regular plain black wire for the negative. So that should help avoid confusion, just something that you need to remain cognizant of. So on the underside of the Lionel Fast Track, you'll see there are these little metal tabs here, these little nubs, these little tabs. Those are for these accessory power wires. In fact, the first generation of train sets, Lionel train sets with the Fast Track, if you look at the terminal track underneath the underside of the terminal track, you'll see that it's these wires connected to this with a small notch. So I'm going to take the positive and attach it. It doesn't really matter which way you attach it, as far as, you know, are the curved ends of the crimped connection, you know, to the outside or to the inside. That doesn't matter. It just matters that you seat this fully on that little nub so that you have good electrical connection. So the little nub right here toward the inside of the track is your positive. This little nub out here toward the outside of the track is your negative. And it's the same here for this set. So this middle set is going to be positive. This outside one is going to be negative. And you might have to just gently take a little screwdriver blade, or in this case a knife, and kind of pry it out away from the plastic road bed just a smidge, so that you can get the wire on there. But essentially, once you have it started, it might require just a little bit of gentle coaxing from a set of pliers. But once it's actually started on that little nub, it should slide on with very minimal issues. So now I have that done. I'm going to kind of split these apart just a little bit more and then wrap them together. Now you might be thinking, well, why split them apart just to wrap them together? Well, split them apart, that way when I'm under the table working, it's not as much of a pain trying to get them. That's one less thing I have to do with something that's already done. I'm going to feed this down through the hole. And then when it slides through, I'm just going to grab it, and there it is. That one's in place. I'm going to do this same exact process on the opposite end of the railroad. I'm not going to film that because I personally feel you've watched me do this the first time. Making you watch it again would just be insulting your intelligence. So we'll be right back with the next step. Alright, so now we have the wires, the feeder wires installed on the underside of the track on both ends of main track number 1, this backside stretch of main track number 1. So now the next step is going to be cutting the track back in with the rest of the track. So we're just going to flip this whole thing. And then we will slide this end back into place. And I'll go down on the other end and do the same thing on that end. So, with the track all back together, we can put the screws back in. And we will resink the screws all the way down in roughly the same spot where they were. All right, so now we have graduated to the actually putting the crimps on for the wire connections, and I'm gonna be using what's left of the old fast track accessory power wire that that was attached here. So remember, match up the white stripe with the white stripe. Otherwise, you get a short, and a short is bad, especially when you're running locomotives that cost several $100s. So, this is kind of the frustrating stage of this project because, you know, you almost need 3 hands to get this done, and your tools to not wander off. There it is. So, I'm going to slide the old bus into the solid part, the portion that allows the wire to pass through. I'm going to slide the new bus into the dead-ended portion of this wire connect. And then, with both in place, just squeeze down, and it should have good electrical continuity. Just give it a little tug. You don't have to yank the hell out of it, just give it a little tug just to make sure everything is as it should be, and then snap that shut. And we're going to do the same thing with the negative. So I'm going to put the old bus through this portion right here that passes all the way through. And again, I'm going to put the new bus, or new feeder rather, in the dead-ended portion. Grow my third hand to hold this in place, or at least try to. And then give everything a nice squeeze. And of course, the positive wire slipped out. So we're going to have to redo that. No big deal. Quick little snip. And then we'll be off to the races. Grab another one. Dang it. This time I'm just going to slip it on like such. This will happen sometimes, just part of the process, I guess, is the best way of putting it. And where did that wire go? It's another part of the process is keeping track of your wires. So we'll slip that in, kind of hold on to it there. Give it a good squeeze. I apologize if the camera work is not that great. I'm trying to do this and be mindful of the camera. So there, now we got a good connection, no looseness, no floppiness like it should be. And that is the basic process all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and knock out the rest of these, and we'll get to the next step once I'm done. So a critical step in this process is keeping your wires organized. So ideally you want your wires, you want your bus wire for main track number 1 in this case, ideally to follow underneath main track number 1 so as to help mitigate confusion. You also don't want them just hanging willy-nilly, you know, all sloppy and whatnot. So to mitigate that, what I'm doing is drilling out little holes, feeder holes, to send the bus line through in the support studs of the railroad to help keep stuff organized and relatively presentable looking. And this should go a long way towards mitigating any future headaches. Once I have everything installed and in place, I'll go through and attach it so that it doesn't just hang loose. But I'll be doing this as well all the way around back to the control stand. I apologize, I didn't realize that cross brace was blocking the view, but yes, that's the what I was getting at. Just drilling a basic little hole through the support stud there, through the cross brace to run the wire through to help hold it up. Okay, so here we have a situation where there's a nice long length of wire right beside a nice long length of wire. So what I'm going to do is pull it tight, pull both of them tight, not super tight, to figure out where exactly everything is going to meet up. So I will take this, do a bend with my finger so I can mark it. The next step will be separating these two. Gonna have to separate them for the obvious reason I can't attach the wires to I can't crimp the wires together while they are, you know, stuck together, so they got to be pulled apart. So let's set that down, grab my trusty Gerber, and just separate these guys real quick. Okay, grab my trusty Gerber and my trusty pliers and pull them apart. There we go. So now that they're separated and that spot is marked, I can slip on the first suitcase connector And I'm only showing this because earlier I was doing it to the end of the wire, and this time I'm doing it in the middle of the wire. So remember, on the bus wire for this, in this case, the red stripe is the hot. So we'll slip that on real quick like. Make sure to cover that rough spot in the insulation. And then remember, on the accessory power wire, the white stripe is the hot, so I have the hot to hot. And I'm going to have to flip this around because these suitcase connectors, they do have a dead end that were on one end where it feeds in, so you got to be mindful of that. So now I have this sitting in what should be the correct spot. I've got my fingers holding everything together, and I will just crimp down on it real quick. Make sure I got a good connection. Good connection. Snap it shut. And I'll do the same thing to the negative. I'll grab another suitcase connector, and like I said, there's an opened end right here, and then there's a dead-ended end. So make sure that you have your open end towards where the feeder wire is sitting, and then slip that negative feeder wire into place with everything nice and where it should be. Just kind of support it as best as you can and give it a good squeeze. And of course that didn't frickin' make. And I only have two of these, two spare suitcase connectors, so I'm gonna try that again. Alright, so take two. Hopefully it's good. And I believe we got a winner there. So now I could have trimmed this accessory power wire, but I did not want to, because what if I tear this railroad down? I'd like to be able to reuse as much as I can. So I'm going to use some electrical tape. And I'm just going to tape it together. Starting here, I'll just run a small little thing of tape to wrap it around and hold everything together, hold everything in place. And it doesn't have to be 100% pretty and professional grade. All you're really wanting it to do is just stay in place. So a couple little wraps and you're good. And then I'm going to do the same thing back up here underneath the table, excuse me, back up here underneath the table where they meet. I'm going to do the same thing, just give it a couple of quick little wraps. Again, just to hold everything in place, make sure nothing shifts around too much. And there's no undue stress on the feeder wire or the bus line. And then I'm going to run stuff back towards the control stand, which is back over there. Alright, so we are nearing the end of this project. And the final consideration, I'm going to use a standard pair of dikes to cut the new bus line for the trolley line to the appropriate length to tie in with the rest of the trolley line. So, I'll make my cut right where I want it. That gives me a little chingladera length of wire left if I need it for something down the line, which honestly I've got a whole another roll of the stuff, so I probably will, in all honesty, throw that away. Now remember, red is hot. This is model power wire I'm using for the trolley line, but essentially it's the same principle. Whereas the white wire, I was using the red stripe for the hot, still using the red for the hot. So I'm going to slip this connector on over the existing bus line. Well, it's not bus line, it's the feeder, existing feeder rather. And then I will grab my pliers, shove this new feeder, well, the new bus line I should say, in and clamp down, crimp it down. Give it a gentle tug, make sure everything's connected right. Seems to be. And we'll grab the final suitcase connector and do the same thing over here. Just slip it on and then slip the new feeder or new bus, the rest of the new bus line in. Cramp it down. Good, good. Snap the suitcase connector shut so that little blade stays locked in place. And that should be all the wiring done as far as the additional feeders that I wanted to add. So the trolley line, I need to clean it up a little bit as far as some feeder wire, as far as bus wire hanging down, but that's not a big concern. I'll get to that eventually. Right now, I'm going to get out from underneath this railroad and get off my knees, which are screaming at me, and we'll test to make sure we got no shorts. Alright y'all, moment of truth. I haven't completely cleaned up the tools yet because I'm leaving them out just in case. Should be good, but just in case. Alright, so we'll test out the trolley line first. I'm curious if this is, no, it's not a short, it's just dirty track. So, not a short. Everything works. This track needs to be cleaned. Alright. Let's do main track number 2. That's a good sign. So remember when I said make sure you had hot to hot and ground to ground, which is a basic principle of electrical work? Yeah, apparently I had a wire crossed underneath there, and that was the cause. So I've got everything back together, and let's try it out. Now before, still a little bit of a speed drop, but much better than it once was.